This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy, and this lesson is Advanced Stick Figure Drawing. That's right. This is the lesson where we are really going to learn how to make our little characters sing. Since these are going to be so important to us, let's figure out, not something that people often say, how to draw a stick figure. Well, let's go ahead and make a bit of a science out of how to draw a stick figure. This, to me, is pretty much the ideal stick figure. Now, you'll notice something here, that the head is pretty big. The purpose of stick figures, again, is to emphasize as much as we can about what this person is thinking, what this person is doing, what this person is feeling. And if we tried to draw a regular person, which I'll show you in a moment, we wouldn't be able to emphasize those things with near the clarity that we can with our simple little stick figure. The proportions that we want to do, when you set out drawing a stick figure, we always start with the head. Just draw a circle and start with the head. And then the way I like to think about it is the head in an ideal stick figure represents about 1/3 of the total height of the stick figure. The body takes up the remaining third, and the legs, which we're going to find are very expressive, actually take up the last third. So the rule of thirds in terms of stick figures: head, body, and legs. The arms are going to attach about the same length as the legs, just below the head, and there we have it. We don't need a whole lot more than that. Now, let's just contrast that real quickly with a real human, which normally says if you're going to draw a real human, you're supposed to draw 7 heads. Is that 7? There's 7 heads. Okay, that's how the proportions of a real human. The head is here, shoulders, feet. Now there's the proportions of a real human. Not only is that very hard to draw, the fact is that that's going to become very, very difficult to show a whole lot about what's going on in the face in any real meaningful way. And, you know, look at the difference. This is what we want to draw, believe it or not. And this is what is kind of an idealized form of a human as would appear in most Renaissance paintings or something. Now, this is the critical part. This is the kind of drawing we want to do for the purposes of showing what's going on in people's minds, not this kind of drawing. So don't even worry about that kind of proportion. On an interesting side note, if you are interested in doing block figures, we tend not to start with the head, we start with the body, and then you add your legs, and then you add your head, which is part of the reason I find them harder to draw. For some reason, I think when you're thinking about a person, the first thing we tend to think about is their head, which is why when I'm drawing my stick figures, I love to start with the head. When you're doing a block figure, you're starting with the body, which is a very different way of thinking about a person. It requires that you have to think about it in advance a lot more. What kind of person am I going to draw? Whereas if we start with the head, we just think, well, just draw a circle and let the rest of the person emerge. And on that same note, you know, what are we doing when we're drawing blob pictures? Well, gosh, we're not really starting so much anywhere because we're kind of just drawing the whole thing all at once. And so we're thinking about the whole person, which to me, again, when I'm trying to draw real fast and my intent is to show what this person is doing, that gets a little bit tricky. So the rule of thirds: head, body, legs, arms, gives us a stick figure. Those are the basics, the details that we like to add on. It's real important, I find, that if we do add some little feet, just little circles, and little hands, because we know that feet are necessary to stand up on and hands are necessary for holding things. So feet and hands really show us that we've got a person, and we can make that person do all kinds of things. Let's start out with our standard standing person. And let's say that I want to show this person is a business person. I give this person a briefcase, and I can give this person a tie. And there I've got a little standard business person. Now I can make, let's make a person doing something. If I bend the legs back a little bit, a lot of emphasis on the legs, and I put some skis, and then I can put poles in those hands. And now I've got a little skier. Let's say I want to make someone walking. A lot of expression, again, is going to come from legs. Always draw the circle for the head and then the body. And legs just for walking, well, let's just imagine. Think in your own mind. What are your body parts doing when you're walking? There's someone walking. Now, what's going to happen if we want to make someone running rather. Running, of course, means that we're leaning forward quite a bit, so we're going to bend that body a little. And think about what your feet are doing. One leg's down, hunting the ground. One leg's up in the air. One arm's way out behind you. One arm's out in front. There's the way we can make someone running. Let's go ahead and try to make someone bending over. Why not? We again start with the head. Now in this case, what's the difference is the body's going out straight behind. There's those little feet. And look at that. Someone's trying to reach down to touch their toes. And what happens if we try to draw someone upside down? Well, we still start the same way. We start with our head. Let's make someone diving. Woo! And there's someone diving down. That's pretty much it as far as the basics of drawing the stick figure. Again, the rules to remember are start with the head, make the body just about as long, the legs just about as long, the arms just about as long. If you want to, add some hands and some feet. And then, of course, we're now going to move on to the most important part of all, which is going to be the face. Which brings us to the most important part of what we're drawing when we're drawing people, which is their faces. Because if we think about it, we just looked at what we can do with bodies, but where we're going to get so much sense of expression, so much sense of what a person is actually thinking, is from what we show in their face. And let's just start out with a basic neutral face. For the purposes of our stick figures, faces are going to be really simple. They only contain a couple of things. They contain a mouth and two eyes. And what we're going to find is that for the most part, because our stick figures are going to be drawn really fast, and they're typically going to be drawn pretty small, most of what we're going to be able to mess with in terms of emphasizing things is going to be that mouth. And so if we start out with a neutral mouth, now let's say that we want to make someone a little bit happy. We all know how to do that. And let's say that we want to make someone really, really happy. We know how to do that. And let's say we want to make someone who's just so ecstatically happy they just can't stand themselves. We just add a line across the top of the mouth. Look at that. That person could be talking. I'll show you how to make them for sure look like they're talking in a moment. But right now all we know is that they're really happy. So in a way, this is kind of our spectrum of moving towards happiness. And now let's move towards unhappiness. Yes, because not all our characters are going to be happy, especially as we're starting to draw pictures that relate to lots of aspects of business. Sometimes people are happy and sometimes they're not. Okay, so we then move on to this sort of the unsure. I don't know what I think about that. Our mouth is sort of half a smile and half a frown. And then, of course, we all know how to draw someone who's less happy than that, is we draw a frown. And then if we want to draw someone who's really, really unhappy, we close the frown out at the bottom. They are really upset about all of this. And one of the ways we can emphasize happiness is by drawing some lines. Look at that. And we can emphasize sadness, anger, unhappiness, also by drawing some lines. Now in both cases at the ends, we can see pretty well that these people are either happy or unhappy, but we can't tell if they're talking or not. So I like to emphasize even one more. Let's go even further to the extreme. If you want to show that someone is just jumping with joy, make the happy mouth really big, barely give yourself enough room for those eyes, and look at that person now. And the same is true at the opposite end of the spectrum. If you want to show that someone is just brutally unhappy, just screaming their head off, same thing. Turn that frown upside down. Turn that smile upside down and make it really big and close it off. Now, there are some more variations on these faces that we can do. Let's talk about some actions that come out of people's faces. And a very frequent action, of course, is something we're going to show all the time. Someone talking. Da 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 da. I'm talking. Now, if I'm yelling, I can make the mouth round. Now I'm really yelling. And what's the opposite maybe of yelling? What about if someone was sleeping? If I want to show that someone's really content. Always turn the sleeping eyes up. Add a little bit of a happy smile. And now we've got someone who's just happily sleeping. Now if we do the opposite, unhappy sleeper. Oh no, definitely having some kind of bad dream. Ooh, scary things going on in here. Not happy about that at all. And what else can we do with our little faces here to show a range of emotions and feeling? Oh, I think that we can do something with eyes. Yeah, let's push up with the eyes. We haven't really done much with eyes. You'll notice that in most cases, eyes are just the dots. Or, of course, a couple places here we made eyes as little lines. But one of the things that we might want to emphasize sometimes, if we really want to show expression, is let's go ahead and add eyebrows. Woohoo! That person is really happily surprised. And over here, if we want to make someone really, really angry with us, we add those eyebrows that go down. So eyebrows are a nice little tool to add as well. And now once we've got our characters, there's one other thing that we can do to help really start to differentiate, say, this face from that face, even if otherwise they look alike, which is the addition of hair and the addition of hats. That's a way to show a lot of difference between people, is just by adding some hair and some hats. Let's do a quick run through of different types of hair that we can add. Let's just do a few. Often it's fine to just leave our stick figure as a little bald guy, but if we want to make him look a little bit more like a man, we can just add some hair. If we want to make her look a little bit more like a woman, there's lots of different kinds of hair we can add. Lots of ways to differentiate from one person to another. And of course, the last way to really make someone distinct is let's change the eyes completely and we'll add glasses. People look quite different when you add glasses. Often they look completely blank-eyed, which was a surprise to me. I thought, oh, adding glasses would be an easy thing to do. But if you just add glasses without anything else, you look like someone who's, I don't know, it's kind of myopic, I guess is the real sense. Kind of, woo. So those are some of the things that we can do to top off our stick figure. What kind of a stick figure am I? Well, right now, I'm a happy stick figure. Let's do it. Okay, we are done with people. Quickly, want to wrap up to show the extent of what we can do. And what I was thinking would be a good way to do this is to really push the borders of emphasizing how much we can show about a person's sense of mood and ability and thought just from pictures. And I thought it'd be interesting to compare this to the Myers-Briggs test. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what Myers-Briggs is a personality test that was developed by a mother and her daughter back in the 1940s to 1960s, based on the work of Carl Jung in the 1920s, who was a psychiatrist, philosopher, who was able to look at how people were different in terms of the way they thought and the way they acted, and he was able to make a model of different personality types, and Myers-Briggs took and made that model something that was very specific, 8 different personality types, and you could take a test, and thousands, if not millions of people have taken these tests to determine what kind of person they are. Now, 2 of the 8 critical personality types is someone an extrovert or an introvert, and is someone do things based on feeling, or does someone do things based on thinking? Now, here's the interesting thing for me about the Myers-Briggs test is there are 8 of these personality traits, and because they're only given names, for me, they become very, very difficult to remember what is one versus the other. So what I always like to think about is if we're going to talk about types, why not draw them? And why don't we use our stick figures to make these things really come to life for us? So what is an extrovert? We start with our stick figure. An extrovert is someone who loves action, who loves other people, who's always coming forward and saying, hey, let's do something. An introvert, on the other hand, is someone who stands a little bit off by themselves, doesn't really represent themselves as particularly open to other people, and may spend their time whistling and thinking. So here we have a very nice visual way using just stick figures of showing really critical differences between what we mean by extrovert and what we mean by introvert. And let's do the same thing for feeling versus thinking. So a feeling person, really feeling their way through. Oh my gosh, let's make it a happy feeling. I'm just so joyous. I'm so happy. I'm just full of love. And let's then make a thinking person with our stick figure. Now, the thinking person, probably not quite so active at the time, maybe sitting down. Maybe with their chin in their hand. Maybe just thinking and thinking, happy thoughts. Complicated thoughts, thinking. Feeling versus thinking. And here we have, you can imagine, using just our stick figures, we could come up with a completely visual way of describing something which, without words, is wonderful but highly conceptual and easy to forget.